What if Hollywood's toughest cowboy knew the biggest secret in town? Behind the stoic stare and silent strength, Randolph Scott carried the names of 6 legendary men, stars who shined in public but loved in silence. For decades, they hid behind scripts and studio lies. Today, we tell the story he never said out loud, the 6 gay actors Randolph Scott quietly protected. But to understand the man behind the myth, we have to go back to where it all began. Randolph Scott was born George Randolph Scott on January 23, 1898 in Orange County, Virginia. He was an iconic figure of American cinema, best known for his stoic roles in westerns that came to define a generation of rugged, noble screen heroes. Raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, Scott hailed from a well-respected Southern family. His father, George Grant Scott, worked as a certified public accountant, while his mother, Lucille Crane Scott, ensured a strong sense of discipline and Southern etiquette at home. As a young man, Scott attended the Georgia Institute of Technology and later enrolled at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he nurtured his interest in drama and the arts. His early life was shaped by a blend of athleticism, academic ambition, and military service. He enlisted in the Army during World War I, serving in France as an artillery observer. This experience instilled in him a quiet strength and composure, qualities that would later translate to his film persona. After the war, Scott moved to Los Angeles in the late 1920s, with the hope of building a career in the motion picture industry. Through family connections, he was introduced to film legend Howard Hughes, which helped him land his first minor roles in silent films. It wasn't long before his tall, striking figure, square jaw, and calm demeanor caught the attention of casting directors. Scott's early roles in films like The Far Call, 1929, and The Virginian, 1929, helped him gain a foothold in Hollywood. Throughout the 1930s, he appeared in a variety of films, including adventure dramas, romantic comedies, and crime thrillers. He began receiving larger parts in the early 1930s. His breakthrough came with roles in The Last of the Mohicans, 1936, and Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, 1938. However, it was the Western genre that truly made Randolph Scott a star. By the 1940s and 1950s, he had become one of the most recognizable and respected Western actors of all time. His reserved but authoritative presence resonated deeply with audiences. Over the course of a distinguished career spanning more than 3 decades, Randolph Scott appeared in over 100 films, more than 60 of which were Westerns. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Scott deliberately cultivated a strong and consistent on-screen persona. He often played the solitary cowboy, a moral and unyielding figure who upheld justice, protected the innocent, and navigated the harsh frontier with quiet dignity. He collaborated frequently with director Bud Budicher and screenwriter Burt Kennedy on a series of critically acclaimed westerns during the 1950s, including 7 Men from Now, 1956, The Tall T, 1957, Ride Lonesome, 1959, and Comanche Station, 1960. These films, often collectively referred to as the Ranown cycle, are now considered masterpieces of minimalist storytelling and psychological depth, showcasing Scott at his artistic peak. What made Randolph Scott's performances so compelling was not only his physical presence, but his nuanced ability to convey inner strength and a personal code without grand gestures or excessive dialogue. He was often cast as the morally upright hero, but his characters were rarely one-dimensional. They were often men scarred by loss, weary from violence, yet still unwavering in their sense of right and wrong. This combination of stoicism, vulnerability, and integrity made him a favorite among directors and fans alike. Unlike other Western stars such as John Wayne, whose larger-than-life bravado defined his roles, Scott's portrayals were restrained and introspective, offering a more understated, realistic portrait of frontier masculinity. He was also a savvy businessman, wisely investing in oil, real estate, and other ventures, which allowed him to retire comfortably in the early 1960s. His final film, Ride the High Country, 1962, directed by Sam Peckinpah, marked a fitting end to his career. In that film, Scott starred opposite Joel McCrea as two aging lawmen confronting the twilight of the Old West, an elegant swan song that mirrored his own departure from the silver screen. Throughout his life, Scott remained a deeply respected figure in Hollywood, admired for his professionalism, discipline, and quiet generosity. He never won an Academy Award, nor did he seem to seek one. Instead, he garnered the enduring respect of peers and critics for his consistent craftsmanship and the integrity he brought to every role. His contribution to American cinema, particularly the Western genre, has left an indelible mark, influencing generations of actors and filmmakers. Directors like Martin Scorsese, Clint Eastwood, and Quentin Tarantino have cited Scott's work as instrumental in shaping their understanding of character-driven storytelling and moral complexity in film. Randolph Scott was married twice over the course of his life, though his personal life remained largely private compared to his on-screen cowboy persona. His first marriage took place in 1936 when he wed Marion DuPont, a prominent American heiress and equestrian sportswoman. Marion was a member of the illustrious DuPont family, one of the most powerful and wealthy families in American history. Her father, William DuPont Sr., was a key figure in expanding the family's industrial empire, while her great-grandfather, Eleuthère Irénée DuPont de Nemours, was the French-born chemist and industrialist who founded what would evolve into one of the largest and most influential chemical corporations in the world. Interestingly, before marrying Scott, Marion had previously been married to George Somerville, a Virginia horse breeder and sportsman. In a twist of fate, Randolph Scott had served as the best man at Marion's first wedding, suggesting a close personal connection and mutual familiarity long before their romantic involvement. The circumstances under which Scott and Marion transitioned from friends to spouses are not well documented, but their union brought together two individuals from distinctly different backgrounds. One a Hollywood actor on the rise, and the other a blue-blooded socialite deeply entrenched in East Coast aristocracy and equestrian culture. Despite the seeming glamour and pedigree of their union, the marriage between Randolph Scott and Marion DuPont proved to be short-lived. After only 3 years, the couple divorced in 1939. There were no children born of the marriage, and some reports suggest that their lifestyles and personalities may have clashed, particularly given Marion's deep ties to Virginia horse country and Scott's growing commitment to his film career in California. Nonetheless, there remained a peculiar and enduring tie between them even after their divorce. Marion DuPont chose to retain the surname Scott, a gesture that may indicate lingering affection or a respect for their time together. She continued to be known as Marion DuPont Scott for the remainder of her life, nearly 5 decades, until her death in 1983. During that time, she became a highly respected figure in American horse racing, establishing Montpelier Estate in Virginia as a major center for equestrian training and competition, and eventually endowing it to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Scott's second and final marriage was to actress Patricia Stillman, and it proved to be much more enduring and personally fulfilling. The couple wed in 1944, during the height of World War II and in the midst of Scott's successful film career. Patricia was 21 years younger than Scott, having been born in 1919. While she had a brief career in Hollywood, she soon stepped away from the spotlight to focus on family life. Unlike his first marriage, Randolph Scott's union with Patricia was marked by longevity, stability, and shared values. They remained devoted to one another for more than 4 decades, a rarity in the entertainment industry and a testament to their strong bond. In 1950, 6 years after their marriage, the Scotts chose to expand their family by adopting 2 children, a daughter named Sandra and a son named Christopher. The decision to adopt rather than have biological children may have been influenced by personal medical or private considerations. but it was consistent with the couple's desire to nurture a quiet, family-centered life away from the limelight. Although Scott continued acting into the early 1960s, by the mid-1950s, he was gradually reducing his workload, allowing more time to focus on his home life. The family lived in Beverly Hills in a stately home, and Scott, though a legendary figure in Western cinema, became known in his later years as a devoted husband and father. Patricia remained by his side until his death in 1987, and she outlived him by more than a decade, passing away in 2001. Together, Randolph and Patricia Scott projected an image of dignified domestic life in sharp contrast to the often tumultuous personal stories of many of their Hollywood peers. Their marriage, though relatively low profile, stood the test of time and remains an understated but important part of Scott's personal legacy. In the golden age of Hollywood, image was everything, and few understood this more than actor Randolph Scott. A towering figure in westerns and a symbol of masculine stoicism, Scott lived during a time when being openly gay in Hollywood could destroy a career overnight. In a rare moment of candor later in his life, Scott reportedly acknowledged the personal struggles of several of his closest peers, men whose careers and public personas often stood in stark contrast to their private lives. He named 6 such actors he had known, each a giant in the industry, who were gay but forced by social mores and studio pressures to conceal their true selves from the public. Cary Grant was perhaps the most famous name on Scott's list and the most intimately connected to him. The two shared a famously close relationship during the 1930s and early 1940s, living together for over a decade in a Santa Monica beach house. Dubbed bachelor roommates by the press, Grant and Scott were often photographed in domestic settings, lounging poolside or sharing meals, offering a glimpse into what many have speculated was a romantic relationship, carefully hidden under the guise of friendship. Though both men eventually married women, speculation about their relationship has persisted for decades. For Scott, who remained a lifelong friend of Grant's, the need to keep their truth hidden was a painful necessity of the era. Montgomery Clift, another name Scott mentioned, was one of Hollywood's most sensitive and emotionally raw actors, known for his tortured performances in films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity. Clift's real-life emotional turmoil often mirrored his roles. Though never openly gay, Clift's sexuality was an open secret among Hollywood insiders. He struggled with immense inner conflict, compounded by the expectations of his profession and the devastating car accident in 1956 that left him physically and emotionally scarred. Randolph Scott, who observed Clift's self-doubt and sorrow firsthand, expressed deep empathy for a man whose brilliance was shadowed by the impossibility of living openly. Merv Griffin may be best remembered today as the affable talk show host and entertainment mogul behind game shows like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. But behind the genial public image was a man deeply guarded about his private life. Despite years of rumors and persistent media speculation, Griffin never publicly addressed his sexuality. Scott knew a different side of him, the one who had to navigate the dual worlds of celebrity and secrecy with meticulous care. For Griffin, the stakes were not only personal but also financial and corporate, as he built a media empire at a time when being outed could lead to ruin. Jim Nabors, beloved as the bumbling but sweet Gomer Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show and its spin-off Gomer Pyle, USMC, was another actor Scott listed as someone who had to hide his true identity. Nabors had a long-term relationship with Stan Cadwallader, and the two were finally able to marry in 2013, just before Nabors' death. But during the height of his fame, Nabors had to carefully manage his public image to avoid any scandal. A persistent urban legend falsely claimed that Nabors and Rock Hudson had married, a joke that deeply distressed Nabors and underscored how toxic and dangerous Hollywood's rumor mill could be for gay entertainers. Cesar Romero, often cast in suave roles and best remembered as the flamboyant Joker in the 1960s Batman TV series, was known for his charm and bachelor lifestyle. Though he never married, Romero maintained a public persona as a ladies' man, while his homosexuality remained an open secret within the industry. Scott, who admired Romero's elegance and wit, lamented the extent to which Romero had to keep his personal life out of public view. "He was a man of great dignity," Scott said, "who deserved to live and love freely, but was denied that simple right by an unforgiving culture." Rock Hudson, the last of the 6 names Scott mentioned, perhaps represents the most tragic embodiment of the era's harsh constraints. Hudson was the epitome of 1950s Hollywood masculinity, starring in romantic dramas and comedies opposite leading ladies like Doris Day. In reality, Hudson was gay, and his double life was carefully managed by his agent, Henry Wilson, who specialized in grooming young male actors for stardom while keeping their personal lives under wraps. It wasn't until Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS in the 1980s that the truth came to light. His death in 1985 became a watershed moment for both Hollywood and the wider public, forcing a new level of awareness and empathy around both gay identity and the AIDS epidemic. Scott, who had watched Hudson rise to fame under the weight of secrecy, mourned both the man and the years he had lost hiding from the world. In naming these 6 men, Cary Grant, Montgomery Clift, Merv Griffin, Jim Nabors, Cesar Romero, and Rock Hudson, Randolph Scott wasn't merely recounting gossip or making confessions. He was honoring their bravery, acknowledging their pain, and subtly condemning the rigid societal norms that had silenced them. Though Scott himself remained guarded about his own private life, his words spoke volumes about the kind of Hollywood that once was, and the courage it took simply to survive in it. Randolph Scott passed away on March 2, 1987, at the age of 89 in Beverly Hills, California. His death was attributed to a combination of heart and lung ailments, which are not uncommon in individuals of advanced age, particularly those who may have been exposed to smoking or the environmental conditions of earlier Hollywood sets. In his later years, Scott had largely withdrawn from public life, choosing instead a quiet, private existence far removed from the limelight of his earlier decades as a Western film icon. Despite his reclusive lifestyle, his passing was noted with admiration by fans, colleagues, and film historians alike, all of whom remembered him as a towering figure in classic American cinema, particularly within the Western genre, where he had established himself as a symbol of stoic heroism and moral integrity. Following his death, Randolph Scott was interred at Elmwood Cemetery in Charlotte, North Carolina, a site chosen for its deep personal significance. Charlotte was Scott's hometown and the place where he had spent his formative years, long before Hollywood beckoned. His burial there was a symbolic return to his roots, underscoring the connection he maintained with the South throughout his life. Elmwood Cemetery, one of the oldest and most historic burial grounds in the region, serves as the final resting place for many notable figures. Scott's grave has since become a modest but meaningful pilgrimage site for admirers of his films and legacy. Scott's marriage to Patricia Stillman Scott had been a long and enduring union, spanning 43 years. The couple met in the early 1940s and were married in 1944. Their relationship was regarded as one of the more stable and private marriages in the often tumultuous world of Hollywood. Together, they maintained a strong sense of privacy, deliberately distancing themselves from the celebrity party circuit and opting instead for a life centered on family, mutual devotion, and shared values. Patricia stood by Scott through the final phase of his career and into his retirement, providing a steady presence during his transition from screen legend to private citizen. She survived him by 17 years, passing away in 2004. In keeping with their lifelong bond, Patricia was buried beside her husband at Elmwood Cemetery, a gesture that further enshrined their enduring connection in both life and death. The couple's residence during their later years was a distinctive mid-century modern home in Beverly Hills, which reflected their refined tastes and the architectural aesthetics of the post-war era. The house, notable for its clean lines, open floor plans, and use of natural materials, was a physical representation of the couple's understated elegance. Unfortunately, despite its historical and architectural value, the home was demolished in 2008. Its destruction marked not just the loss of a significant piece of mid-century design, but also the erasure of a tangible link to a golden age of Hollywood and to one of its most iconic stars. Randolph Scott's legacy, however, extends far beyond his physical presence and possessions. Upon his death, his personal archives, collectively known as the Randolph Scott Papers, were entrusted to the UCLA Library Special Collections. This extensive collection includes a rich trove of materials, such as rare photographs, carefully curated scrapbooks, personal and professional correspondence, handwritten notes, published articles, and even original house plans from his Beverly Hills residence. These papers offer a remarkable window into both the professional and private lives of the actor, chronicling his rise from a young man in North Carolina to one of the most respected leading men of his era. The collection is not only a valuable resource for film scholars and historians, but also a testament to the thoughtful and deliberate life Scott led off-screen. Through these preserved documents, his voice and vision continue to resonate, providing future generations with insight into a man who, though often playing the strong, silent cowboy on screen, left behind a legacy rich in depth, character, and historical significance. They were stars, they were heroes, and in silence, they protected each other. Randolph Scott may have ridden alone on screen, but off-screen, he stood quietly beside 6 men who were never allowed to be seen for who they truly were. Their stories remind us that visibility comes at a cost, and silence, too, was a form of love. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it.